Welcome to the Social for Brokers podcast. The guest on the podcast today is one who's really grabbed social media by the horns and made a commitment to post every day to enhance his presence on social media. Now, we don't work together, but it's been great to see social media content grow and change. And I think this will be really useful for mortgage brokers out there who aren't sure where to start, what to post, or how to be strict with the amount of content that they put out there. Also, as a side note, the branding on the website is absolutely stunning, and I'm excited to see how that, we were speaking about how Jonathan's team's growing and how that branding really comes to the forefront on the social media posts. So Jonathan has been a mortgage broker for 5 years and has had Sterling Southgate for the last 12 months. So he's got the experience, and it's going to be great to talk to him today about how things like downloadable guides help him gain business. So welcome to the podcast, Jonathan. Thanks very much for coming on.
Look, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. And this is going to be uploaded to YouTube as well. And there's the Tottenham badge in the background, I can see.
Right there. England rugby, obviously living in Wales, England rugby for obvious reasons. And then obviously, you know, with King Harry banging in the goals for England yet again recently, it felt right to do it.
He's the only one at the minute, isn't it? It was a bit worrying the other night, wasn't it?
Yeah. Nervy.
Before the Euros, didn't we? And then it all just clicked. Hopefully that's the same thing, hopefully. Anyway, so I wanted to get the first part is really get a bit of a background to who you are, because I'm really excited to get into the social media side of it. But if you could give us a bit of a background as to who you are, because you used to be in golf, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've done a few jobs across the last 23 years, I suppose. Yeah, so I started, I was working in a pro shop and then as assistant golfer at my local club when I was the club I grew up in the southwest of England. It was a funny story. I was working there mainly doing lessons rather than actually getting out and doing, playing any golf myself. So at that point, I realized, this is probably going nowhere. I wasn't good enough really to be a pro. And I wasn't putting enough hours to do it. So I then flipped and went, okay, what can I do next? And my job, my dad gave me an option. He said, look, you can either go and get a job yourself, or you can work in the local factory, which was a pre-packaging food factory. So I was like, I like food, but not that much, right? So it just happened. The guy walked out of the clubhouse when I was up there. I handed him a CV. He said, yeah, come and have a chat with me. He was an estate agent who ran a local estate agency branch. Went there, started working with them. It was a country agent on an apprentice wage, about $3,000 a year. So really, really cutting it out. And worked there for a year, and then basically went from there onto a different company, and I was managing offices within 5 years of starting. So the first 15 years of my last 20-year career have been in property. So estate agency, buying, selling, also developing out our own properties as well. And then I made a transition from going from residential to commercial, then to mortgage advice. So it felt, for a bit I was doing commercial broker for commercial property, and it was like dealing with facts, figures, numbers, great, but you don't really get the person behind the deal.
Right, yeah.
That's why I wanted to get back into people's living rooms, back to advising in some capacity, but I knew I didn't want to necessarily go straight back to a state agency. I wanted to try something different. And that's how I got into mortgage advice, really, because it was the impact of being able to help that person with that lifestyle change, or change in their sort of whatever they were looking to do, but on a different level.
Cool. So it's good, actually. You've got a well-rounded knowledge of the whole property industry, then from the lettings to the sales to so it doesn't matter if it's a landlord, a first-time buyer, or somebody buying. Do you do commercial, or is it all?
So we don't do commercial and residential here at the moment.
But you've got a knowledge of pretty much everything, haven't you? So they can come to you, and even though they're coming to you about the mortgage, you still have a knowledge of everything.
Well, this is it. I mean, having dealt with business transfer, buying and selling large-scale care businesses, which was one of my jobs. I was looking at profit and loss. I was looking at the directors' businesses. We also had a hand in improving that business as well. So giving them advice on how they could improve that business. Obviously, that sits outside the remit of where we are now. But I can look at a set of P&L. I can look at a set of directors' accounts and know instantly where they are. And the same from the sports side, going back to the golf and other things I've been involved in. If ever we get professional sports people come along, we know where their income's coming from, their image rights via a limited company. They've got obviously their club fee, their national fees, international fees. So we've got a big remit when it comes to dealing with clients, because we've seen these things from dealing with them firsthand, either as professional or semi-professional golf, or right through to business transfer. So yeah, a big old mix.
Here's a question for you. If you went out with a client, would you let them win on the golf course?
Never, no. In fact, this is a true story. So the guy I handed the CV to, I ended up, because it was a local club, I ended up playing in a club competition. Like it was battle ball competition, like a week later,
Right.
and yeah, I absolutely rinsed them. We beat them like 5-4, and I think and I think this is the thing about sport, right? That level of competitive edge. I think, especially if it's been individual sport. So I was a county swimmer, good golfer, and typically in karate and these kind of things were all individual sports. I love playing football, I love playing rugby, did to a okay standard, in cricket as well. But the whole that level of commitment that sport gives you when it comes to business, I think there's complete parallels there. You know that you have to go into sprints of 90 days or 3 months to 6 months to get to a particular standard of doing something. And that's kind of set me up perfectly for business.
It's interesting talking about business. I don't think this can be applied to any business. Is month on month, what you tend to find is when you work for a big corporate agent, you're always trying to beat the other branch or beat the other salesperson. When you're on your own, I find myself trying to beat myself. This time last year, what was I doing this time 6 months ago? And that might be in terms of productivity, it might be in terms of turnover, it might be in terms of market share in your particular industry. Always, and I think that's ingrained. If you've been in that sports industry, you've always got that desire to be, haven't you?
Yeah, it completely left field, but one of the best quotes I've ever seen is from Matthew McConaughey when they asked him, "Who do you look up to?" And Matthew McConaughey turns around and says, "I look up to me in 5 years' time." And then in 5 years' time, I look up to the guy who's 5 years ahead of me, because I know exactly where I want to be. And I'm always looking at that person thinking, this is the person I need to become to be able to do this job, this role, whatever it is. So really good quote.
So would you, obviously you've been in 5 years in business now, 5 years ago, would you have seen the business where it is today when you started?
Yeah, so having gone from working underneath an umbrella to working under my own brand, I think it was something I always wanted to do, but I wouldn't have seen it happen this quick, I don't think. I always thought that I'd be working for someone else for sort of 6-7 years. Then once I've got client bank, break out on my own. But the pandemic brought everything forward so quickly, right? So I think when we look at the impact the pandemic had and the way that it just made the whole of the UK seem like it's on your doorstep, because people were used to Zooming, they were used to picking up the phone. They no longer wanted you to drive 2.5-3 hours to sit down with them. And there was an element of trust there from a client that had never been seen before. If you try and do everything over the phone or over Zoom historically, I think there was a risk that you wouldn't be able to read the client, you wouldn't be able to understand their needs, and you wouldn't be able to effectively do the job. Pandemic changed all of that. And it made like my client base of 25% inside the M25 across the south of England into South Wales, it made those clients instantly accessible via a WhatsApp group for a property search, these kind of things, right? So yeah, I think that's, if you'd said 5 years ago, would I have wanted my own business? Absolutely. But I wouldn't have envisaged it being this quick.
It's interesting that you talk about the WhatsApp group. Could you talk us through that? What you help clients? Because if anybody follows Jonathan on social media, and I hope you do after this podcast, you are so personal with clients, aren't you? And that is like testament to you, but it's one of your values of your business.
100%. I think, clients are right at the heart of every decision, should be right at the heart of every decision you make as a business owner, because without them, what's your business? There's nothing. It's just a brand in the ether amongst other brands. So how I've tried to kind of set us apart is by giving them almost that extra layer of service. And it doesn't take any more time. Right. So one of the things that we do when we've got a couple come to us and they're interested in getting some advice about first-time purchase or remortgage or moving home, Once they're happy and on board, I'll slip them into a WhatsApp group. Like it might be Chris Target property search, and in that group they can drop in like Rightmove links to properties they're interested in, Zoopla links, so we can see the stuff. So we've got visibility as advisors of the stuff that they're viewing, the stuff they're interested in, and we can give them, like, even if it's a little question, like, oh, you might want to ask them about that flat roof at the back when it was last looked at. So it just gives them that extra confidence, so they're better informed when they walk through the door and they're speaking to that estate agent, that they've got a different level of confidence, like they've got somebody else in their corner that's fighting for them to make sure they get the best deal, and that they're not sort of, they don't feel like they're hard done by for any reason. Like they turn up and they think, oh, that roof looks great, with a professional's eye, or someone that's been in the industry long enough that can say, those ridge tiles don't look right, you need to have it, ask them when the last time it was looked at, all these kind of things. So it just gives our clients another way to access us. And I think it also allows you to set expectations. You know, part of good service is setting those expectations. So when they get put into that group, if they message in the morning, they're guaranteed to get a response by close of business. Message in the afternoon, we'll do our best to respond by the evening. If not, it'll be first thing in the morning. So we can set those boundaries for clients. Third thing it does is it allows them to get any concerns off their chest about any part of the process. So, and you can also get excited with them, right? Because it's meant to be a really exciting process, buying or selling a house. And then you kind of feel like you're part of that family, you know? So yeah, it's a great tool. And I think these kind of, to have the power of these kind of things in our hands at this day and age, it's like, and no other market I've ever known. It's fantastic to be that involved.
It's such a nice thing. My mum and dad sold before Christmas, and I obviously had the knowledge of the estate agency to help them. But if none of us in the family knew about estate agency yet, they turned around and said to me, oh, this guy called Jonathan's added us to a group and we can drop any questions in there. It removes that formality of an email, so it doesn't feel really formal, but then it takes away a feeling silly phoning you and asking you something. It's that middle ground, isn't it? That they feel confident enough to ask it, but they know that they're not imposing on your day.
100%.
I love that WhatsApp. That's the great.
And the way that most clients open up a question on that is, I'm sorry, I know you're super busy, but I wondered if you could answer a question like this. And do you know what? I say it at the end of every single first appointment, every single first call, whether it's face-to-face call or WhatsApp, whatever it is. At the end of the first call, I always state that there's no such thing as a stupid question. I'd rather you air stuff in this forum so we can resolve it, deal with it, and move on, than you sit there, think about it, and fester on it, because it will just, people have different capacity of dealing with certain questions and concerns. And the last thing I want is for a client to be sitting there worrying about something that I've got the answer to. So just put it in there. And if we can't answer the question, we'll tell you exactly where you need to go to get it. So whether it's their solicitor or an accountant or whatever it is. So yeah.
How will it work as your business gets bigger? How will those WhatsApp groups work if you're not able to respond to them directly? Will you have sort of an admin staff, or how would it work?
Yes, we'll have probably a client management team that will cover those areas. I mean, you can get VAs to look at these things as well. So or a PA to deal with these kind of things. I think my job, I think, will change obviously a lot over the next 3 to 5 years as our plans come to fruition. But the advisors we get come in, I want them to be able to do that stuff. So I want them to have all the red tape, administration stripped away from them, so they literally can be client focused. So there should never be a reason why they can't do what I'm doing, to make that call, to reply to that WhatsApp. That's,
love it.
That's the client part of the journey, right? And as advisors, we need to be held to account, but be able to be there for our clients when they most need us.
Love it. And you are all about adding value to that client. And we'll talk about these downloadable guides as we get to the social media section. But as we go into the social media section, I just wanted you to quickly touch on, you had a commitment to yourself to start uploading to social every day, didn't you?
Yeah.
Are you seeing any results yet?
So really interesting. So I think a lot of these things are trial and error. Okay, so by committing to upload to social every single day, I think, especially given the different platforms that are available, it's enabled us to kind of grow our presence, gain authority, but also to have a nice backlog. So I mentioned to you earlier that I wasn't well like 2 weeks ago, but luckily I had a backlog a back book almost of social posts, and knowing that not every single person has seen everything I've ever done, I could just pop up on my stories a link to this video and then a link to this post. So the content stayed there for the whole 5 days that I was out of the business.
Sorry to butt in there. I want people to really take a note of this, because if you are listening for social media tips, whenever you upload a post, not everybody's going to see it. So even if you posted it a month later, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, reuse that content. That content, the majority of the stuff that you're going to put out will be evergreen, unless you're talking about rates or things like that, which I wouldn't recommend doing because they can be pulled and there's a lot of compliance issues around that. But the content that you're creating today, you could repost in 6 months' time. And that's exactly what Jonathan's saying. He fell ill, but he had a catalogue of social media content that he could pull out of the bag and repost. Sorry to interrupt you there, Jonathan.
No, that's perfect. I think you've nailed it. I mean, that back catalogue, having that stuff from first-time buyers to whatever it happened to be. So I think for me, doubling down on 1 to 2 platforms was the main aim from the start of the year. So I started looking at, say, LinkedIn was an area I thought I'd get more response than I have. So I was posting every single day initially, but now I've pulled that back to once every other day or once every 3 days, but I'm engaging more with people on there.
Yeah.
So I'm flipping the script a bit on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is now, for me, it is all about social. So you engage with other people, you really take interest in what other people are doing. That's the way to grow your brand, in my view, on LinkedIn. And then you drop in your post every couple of days, or every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday are working pretty well for me at the moment. Facebook community pages seem to be like pretty decent. So again, if I'm posting, I think I mentioned this to you once when we spoke before, I tend to use like Facebook groups, like local Facebook groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Instagram for me has been a bit of a game changer. That's the one that's really, I think, the commitment of posting or being visible at least daily that's the one that's kind of paying dividends. I've got a number of clients off the back of Instagram I never thought I'd get. People that I've never met.
That you've never met, and this is the power of it, especially since COVID. It's been, as you said at the beginning, it's been a lot more acceptable for people to do business digitally. Could you talk us through, say, for the last 5-6 days, what have you uploaded to social media? So say for Instagram, for example, because it's a question that a lot of people ask. What have you uploaded to your actual grid? What have you uploaded to stories? Have you created reels? Have you done videos? I just want people to get a sense of what you're doing.
So I tend to look at the grid in 3 different columns. So I want not the central column, but a column to be video content. Okay. So it's nice and easy for people to scroll through and click on their videos. I then have one line of the grid, one column of the grid, which is more branded content. So it'll be branded with Sterling Southgate branding. And then the final third column. I'm only looking down because I'm looking at my phone as I'm running through it, just to remind me. But then I'll put in either a personal post, so a photo of myself and wife, the dogs, whatever it might be. One that's working really well at the moment for engagement is writing a post in my notes on my phone and doing a screenshot of that. So in the notes section on my iPhone, I'll write a post. I mean, I'll give you one, for instance. Let's start with why is the headline. This: why do you want to move home? Why do you want to buy your first home? Why do you want to remortgage? Those 3 questions. And then I put something in the caption that kind of bulks that out a bit more.
Okay.
So it's effectively trying to trigger people on their question of why they want to do something. So that's the way I've done it. So I've done it. Reels are really good. So Reels I find are fantastic for reach. So kind of getting as many people out there as possible. believe it, I'm like, sometimes it's the silliest things. I've never danced on camera, or haven't yet. I don't say I won't ever, but I'm not completely shameless. But things like, I think people really enjoy seeing things, parts of your family as well. So some of the posts I get the most engagement are from me with the dogs, me with the wife.
Yeah.
Video of the dogs doing something stupid, but that's where Reels getting this kind of exposure for the business. And then obviously I've tried carousels as well, haven't had much luck with them, but in the last week I'd say Reels, a little video, a couple of those posts on the notes, and then a couple of branded posts. So that's typically
touch on that. A takeaway note from that is I bang on about branded content all the time, but not every post has to be branded. Yeah. Jonathan there has just said, look, this is no excuse. You can upload to social media by literally writing something in your notes and screenshotting it. Don't procrastinate, do that, upload it. It could be as simple as, what is a fixed race mortgage?
Yeah.
Screenshot it, upload it. And I think that removes any excuse for people to say, I haven't got the time to design posts, I haven't got the time to create something that's branded. That's absolutely fine. Try that note, go and have a look at Jonathan's Instagram and you'll see an example on there. That's a great idea.
Yeah, so one of my favorites was, and this is just, again, a little call to action for people, was like a to-do list. So I just put when I go out shopping and do that stuff, I always do a list. I put like a little thing next to it. So one of the to-do lists I had was mortgage to-do list. Where's let me get it here for you. Right. Yeah, from exchange of contracts. Unchecked are dig out all the buildings cover quotes, phone insurer to start building cover, phone insurers to start life earlier critical illness cover, or then the ticked parts are, as a Sterling Southgate client, we start all relevant policies. And the second tick is you can relax and celebrate exchange on your new home. And that kind of stuff is like, it's just so visual, but it doesn't need to be a picture. It doesn't need to be anything. It can be literally just text, one bit ticked, one bit not, the bit you want them to really lean on and understand.
And that will be a mix between your branded content and that stuff that's just very ad hoc. Oh, good idea. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I want to kind of nip social media in the bud there, because we've talked so much about it. I want to get into these downloadable guides that you offer. So what do they do and how do they benefit your business? Okay,
great. So one thing I wanted to do when I started the business was to try and give more value to the market than I was getting. So I think the biggest thing for a client in a Sterling Southgate client is that they always leave them more educated than when they first came to us. Okay. And one of the ways to do that was by creating consumer guides. So from a business perspective, it could be seen as a lead magnet. But from our perspective, 100% is down to educating that client and giving them a bit more of an understanding of what they're getting themselves in for. So as a business, the way we operate is we have those guides, sometimes on an advert, a Facebook advert, sometimes just directly from our link tree, which is a link in our bio. I don't know if you want to touch on that a bit more in a minute, but the link tree element. So in a link tree, it will say download our free guide on our 5 top tips for first-time buyers or remortgaging, whatever it is. So those clients can then hit that link, download the guide. And what it then does behind the scenes, because we've got their sort of sign off, they're okay to send them that guide and follow up, they then go into a bit of a sales process with us. So they'll be sent an email that will say like a thank you email with a video. And we're fleshing this out actually at the moment. Our videographer's going through and changing a few things in there. So there'll be a thank you video. Then there'll be follow up a couple of days later with, I don't know, budget planner, a couple of days later with a testimonial. And then all we're doing is trying to just keep that client warm through that whole process, because not everyone's ready to do business the moment they download a guide. I think this is where I've gone wrong historically at previous companies. Whenever a lead's come through, you think this person's, we got to call them now, and if they don't answer their phone 3-4 days later or 5 days later, they haven't answered their phone, like that's it, that's the end of that lead, we've been them. This effectively enables us to stay in touch with that client and allow them to come to us on their terms when they've had enough value from us. Once they've seen how much we're willing to give up front then invariably it becomes more pull marketing than push marketing.
Yeah.
So that's how the guides came into. So we've got a first-time buyer guide, a remortgage guide, home mover guide. It's all based on 20 years worth of experience in the industry, right? So I've seen the pain points for people in the past. And the last one we've got is a protection guide. So it gives you the belt and braces, what you need to know about life cover, critical illness cover, income protection, all that good stuff, and family income benefit as well. So yeah.
And they can refer back to that. I love the idea of those guides that you are, and I 100% believe you that the point of doing those is to educate people. You're not doing it to enter them into a sales funnel. I think that's part of that's like a secondary benefit of doing that.
Yeah, that came later. That literally came. I mean, we designed the guides, we put the guides out. So every single person who called us or arranged an appointment with us, we'd ask them, but what category are you in, first time buyer, home mover, or not? I'd send them a guide. And that guide then gave them a bit more comfort in there's some authority behind this business. It's not just some guy, just not just another mortgage advisor, which I say that without any malice at all. But the concept being, we've given them more value so that they're more likely to say, okay, well, we've now got something for free. There's from the social science side of it, people are more likely to engage.
And it's so much, if you think about it from a very simplistic point of view, and I know email marketing isn't simplistic, but if somebody's sat at work and an email pops up on their phone and it says Sterling Southgate, it's so much easier for me to reply to you and say, need to book an appointment, than it is for me to go onto social media, go onto Google, find the yellow pages, find a mortgage broker that I might not trust, go and get in touch. And not that they're not trustworthy, it's just that I've got no relationship with them. You're there on my phone, and that's where Instagram stories work very well, because you're there. I can see you. It removes the friction of me getting in touch with you. I just send it now.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're all about, removing the friction in every part of our process. So I'll give you, for instance, so when we're in Facebook groups, I mentioned them earlier, when we get tagged in a Facebook group, our local Facebook group, for someone looking for a mortgage advisor, we've got a very set process that we go through. So we're not just going, thank you very much, and then hope that person calls us. In that Facebook group, whenever somebody mentions our name, first thing we do is thank the person who are normally a previous client who recommended. We'll then reply to it with a link to our Facebook, and then reply to that reply with a Calendly link straight into our diary. So it's completely frictionless. If you've got 20 other mortgage advisors being tagged in that one post, who are they going to look through? And the one that's going to bulk it out more is going to be the one with Sterling Southgate on it. It's going to give you where you need to go to get your authority on the business. And it's going to give you an easy in to just click a button and book a call.
I love the idea of the Calendly link. I think it's a great way to do it. Right, perfect. Well, we're going to now get into the strategy question. I love this question on the podcast. I hope you do too. You've got your, I kind of ask people this before they come on the podcast, so they're not caught flat-footed. So we're going to pretend that you've moved to the north of Scotland. You've got a laptop, a mobile phone, and an internet connection. What would you do to start generating mortgage business?
Okay. So yeah, this is a really interesting one. And I think this is, we've been through this in the last 12 months. So
exactly. Yeah, you did exactly what.
So it's pretty easy one. We haven't moved to the north of Scotland, but still the concept of being dropped in an area and with no business. So I think first thing I'd do would find the local coffee shop, because I'd need a drink. I think travel 300 miles to be dropped off nowhere. So I'd find the local coffee shop, and I'd probably go on a process of first looking at what local, hit Rightmove, find out all the local estate agents. So pick the phone up to all the local estate agents, find out if they've got any introducer agreements, because that's normally quick business. If you're building authority again in that area, I'd be documenting everything on Instagram. So I'd make sure every shop I went into, every place I visited, everything I did, I tagged that business in it to make sure that they were getting exposure. Ergo, I'm getting exposure. They'll probably pop it onto their stories as well. I find all the local business networking groups. So like go onto Eventbrite and find out what free groups there are as well. So there's three predominant areas there. So using socials to geotag the location of where you are, so that when people are searching that location, you are there more frequently than anyone else. Making sure that you're leveraging all local contacts, so estate agents, solicitors, accountants, people like that. And then obviously being as visible as you can, go and attend groups face to face, go to those, now we're allowed to, thank God, going out and spending time in front of people, building your own personal brand in that area. So Eventbrite's a good one for that. But yeah, Eventbrite would be the best.
So getting your face out there. So it's interesting because you're very big on social. For you to kind of say, no, I wouldn't. You haven't really mentioned the laptop, the internet connection, or the mobile phone. Yeah. You're using that to find networks face to face.
Yeah.
And I assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you will then speak to them, follow my socials
100%
off the back of it. Right. Okay.
100%. Yeah. So I think there's a greater impact because obviously, as with the best will in the world, unless you hit something that goes viral very quickly with socials, it's a time spent thing. Yeah. So you've got to be in it. It's time in rather than timing. I mean, you might get the odd reel that gets like 10,000 likes or whatever, and 10,000 views, and you get a bit more exposure that way. But it is a bit of a medium-term game, not long game, but the more time you spend on socials, the better. But if you can spend time with local business people or local introducers and tag them in all the content, you get them into a social selling mindset, and then you can kind of create an ecosystem around you of good introducers. Because, I mean, one of the first things I did when I set this business up, obviously the socials was extremely, extremely important to start documenting the journey. That was only so that when we get to year one, we've got a back catalogue of stuff there. And when the meeting introduces, it's more like there's more to see of us. But getting in front of people, being personable, you never know. I mean, when I first started here and started the business, I went to some local free events, networking events. And it was I met an accountant who had 2 or 3 clients that needed help. That's instant money. Yeah. Solicitors, less so, but accountants, property professionals, estate agents. Then
don't forget these, even if they haven't got any leads, these are still people that will more than likely need a mortgage. Yeah, so even 100%. If you don't get any leads, it's you introducing that person that John Smith, actually, I haven't got any leads, but be honest with you, my mortgage is up next month. It's quick. As you said, that's the quick money. Your social media is your long-term game, isn't it? That's what you use it for.
But I think the documentation is really important there, Chris. I mean, like if we look back at everything we've done over the last 12 months, there was definitely a difference between the time and when we weren't documenting what we were doing on a near daily basis. Now that could be a check-in on Instagram, as I do in the morning on stories, just saying, this is what I've got lined up for today. Mentioned obviously podcast I'm doing, a few clients I'm speaking to. Then I'll do probably an evening one of checking in, saying, I've helped this client, help that, because you never know who's watching and who's listening. Again, it could not be the right time right now, but I've got they're now a client, but a person who's been following us on social since mid-January. She's a relocation agent in Somerset. Never met her, never liked any of my stuff, never commented on any of my stuff. Popped out of the blue. I've wondered if you could have a quick call with us. We're thinking of buying this property and we just need some advice.
She's never interacted with anything you've uploaded.
Never.
Wow, and this is the power of it.
Yeah, because people lurk in the background, and they don't want to get involved necessarily at that time because they might not have the confidence to. But trust me, the time you spend on these things, if you're consistent with it over a prolonged period of time, it will start to pay, and it's already starting to pay for us. And we've only been doing it 3 months. Awesome. With that sort of regularity.
And I just want to finish the podcast on a bit of an analogy that I uploaded to Instagram a while ago. Is if you think of your social media audience as a little town and you think of your social media posts as billboards around that town, if there's 10 businesses and there's 100 billboards and you post 70 of those billboards, every time somebody walks past that billboard, they might not necessarily take a photo of it. They might not take a selfie and send it to their friend in front of this billboard. But every time they walk past one, they consistently take in your brand.
Yeah,
that's exactly what social media is like.
100%.
Bill, you could not physically say what the ROI on a billboard is. No. So why do we expect the same from every single social media post?
And this is talking about billboards. This is a funny thing. Before Christmas, we were very close to signing up with one of these billboard companies to put some advertising in the local train stations. And actually, when we work through the ROI, it's just another visual tool.
Yeah.
But everything we would have done on those, and we've put it back to mid-year now, but everything we would have done on those would have directed us back to socials. Because I think that's where you can have the most clout. And you can build authority really, really quickly using social media, because people, is it 7 times people have to see you or something like that?
There's like the 7 touches normally we sell in, isn't it? That's where it all came from. I'm not saying that billboards aren't a good idea, but what I'm saying is you never put a billboard out and can analyze how many leads you've got from that billboard. And it's the same with social media, but that lady is a perfect example.
Yeah, perfect.
That she's never engage with any content message you at all in 6 months, yet you're the one she comes to. Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for coming. As a little thank you, I'd like to donate £10 to a charity of your choice. Which charity would you like?
Tommy's, please. So last year my wife and I went through a bit of a painful time, and they were fantastic. So yeah, £10 is brilliant if we can go.
Fantastic. I'll make that donation. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, please go and follow your social media. We didn't really talk about this on the podcast, but you're hiring a videographer, aren't you?
Already in place. Yeah. So
awesome.
The videographer's there now, churning through our old content, making it pretty, and building out our brand as well. So yeah, really, really grateful. And we're building from the ground up with our marketing. I think it's the most important thing you do as a business.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Cheers.